Good morning and welcome. My name is tlewis and I serve as the Director of Membership and Engagement. My role is to help you learn more about our congregation and to assist you in finding meaningful and fun ways to connect. Whether you've been attending services for a long or short time, I would love to talk with you. You may reach me directly at tlewis@unitytemple.org, or you can go to our website at unitytemple.org and fill out a visitor form. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you enjoy the service.
Good morning. My name is Amanda Coletta-Cott, and I serve on your Board of Trustees. It is my pleasure to welcome you here this morning. If you are here and new for the first time, welcome. We look forward to getting to know you. We invite everyone to join us in our Zoom coffee hour immediately following the service. The link may be found in Friday's email, the e-beacon, or by emailing tlewis@unitytemple.org to request the link. Each week, we remind ourselves of our congregation's core values: connection, transformation, justice, and acceptance. We strive to embody these core values in our daily lives by welcoming all, inspiring compassion, nurturing wonder, and serving community.
Hello, I'm Lillian Homan, and I'm a member of the UT 2021 auction. I want to tell you about one very special event, and that is Robert Burns' Supper. It's something that's celebrated all over the world in the immortal memory of Robert Burns, a Scottish poet. And our dinner at Unity Temple will have as many as 60 seats for all of you who would like to come. And we'll have Scottish dancers, Scottish piper, and we'll have a Scottish menu, which is salmon, poached salmon, haggis, cockaliki soup, toddies and neeps. And we'll have a lot of fun too. If you would like to recite one of the poems, just go online, or perhaps you have a volume of Bobby Burns' poetry. I hope you can come, and thank you very much.
We invite you to light your chalice along with us. We are the Unitarian Universalists. This is a church of the open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We take care of planet Earth and each other.
Good morning and welcome to Unity Temple. We are so glad that you have joined us for worship this morning. As we settle into our Sunday morning service, I invite you to tend your garden, whether it be the garden of your soul, the garden of your backyard, the garden of our Unitarian Universalist community, or just simply the garden of our lives. I ask that you take a moment to examine, to listen to our Mother Earth, to our souls, that we might learn new lessons from the world around us and from the quiet murmurings of our hearts. Join me today as we tend our gardens. Whoever you are, wherever you are on life's journey, wherever you are in the world, you are welcome here. Come, let us worship together.
Hi, my name is Katie Bartholomew, and this is my mom, Judy Ward, who raised me as a Unitarian. Please join us in the words of our covenant.
Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God.
Please join us in singing hymn number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth.
Good morning. Welcome to our Time for All Ages, where we are remote in an Oak Park backyard. Today, we will be having a field trip during our Time for All Ages, a field trip to my backyard. We will be taking a trip of our backyard garden. We started planting gardens when the kids were about 3 and 2 years old. We wanted our kids to have fresh, organic food. We wanted them to see what it took to grow our own food. And so gardening began as a very food-focused journey, but has become much more of a spiritual one in the past several years. And I'll talk more about that later. For now, let's visit some of these plants. What we have here in the garden is a whole bunch of different things. On this side of the garden, we have some peppers and tomatoes. We have some eggplants. Over here, we have some parsley, and along the edge over there, some radishes. We have sunflowers here. I love their shiny, yellowy, smiling faces every morning. The birds love them too, and they love them so much that they were the ones that actually carried the seeds over here, because I didn't plant any sunflowers here this year. What's also here is some okra and some fennel. This fennel is actually beloved of my son, who loves to eat especially the fennel fronds that are here, but it also includes some seeds. So this year what we did is we allowed last year's fennel just to continue to stay in the ground, and it has flowered, which means that we can harvest these seeds and use them again for future plantings. Over on the other side of the fennel, we have golden beets here. We have green and yellow beans. We have some collards and some kale. Oh, and don't want to miss the okra. Lots of different things in this part of the garden. So let's go to the next part. We have cucumbers, a teeny tiny little melon underneath the giant tomatillo branch, which also decided to come back all on its own. In fact, we have tomatillos in the middle of our yard. They love to reseed themselves. The melon is a tiny variety called Tigger melon, which grows to about the size of a softball and is orange and yellow striped. It's quite beautiful and it tastes delicious. Like the fennel and the tomatillos, the cilantro was a replanting from last year. It flowered again this year, and you can see some of the flowers here. And what happens after the flowers go away is that we get the seeds, which we will then plant again in the future. What the garden also includes this year is something that we have done for the first time ever. It's a special type of planting called the Three Sisters. It's an indigenous way of planting corn, as you can see here, squash, and beans. You plant the three of them together because the nutrients that each of the three have actually feeds each other. And so they actually support each other and protect each other from bugs and other insects. But those three the nutrients from the three different plants also feeds the soil. So it's not only good for harvest and how much food you get, but it's also good for the earth itself. And you can use these in many different varieties. So you can plant winter or summer squash, and you can plant any kind of trellising bean, meaning it could be a bean like a lima bean, or it could be a yard-long bean. It doesn't really matter, just as long as it's a bean, and it will trellis right up the corn stalk. So the last part of our garden that we have is over here. This part of the garden is actually my herb garden. This includes some lemon thyme, some borage, which if you take these lovely little purpley blue leaves, you can actually put them in your water and they taste like cucumber. And as you can see, we have a little friend who's come to visit us. We also have some calendula. We use calendula as part of a plantain salve. Plantain salve is good for burns and cuts, and when you add calendula to the salve, it can actually be really good for burns and for just soothing and calming skin. We have here oregano, which has gone wild. They were only tiny plants last year, and this year not only is it huge, but they flowered. In the midst of the oregano, we have some thyme. We have some native prairie flowers. This is one variety, and we have another, the prairie coreopsis right here. We have sage, which also just went wild, and some chives, which are actually over 13 years old. We've carried them in a pot through all of our moves since our oldest child, Luna, was born, and which we have finally planted in the ground here in Oak Park. On the other side of this garden, we have some purple cone flowers, also called echinacea, which are actually really good for sore throats and can boost the immune system, as well as just pretty. And here is a very special plant. This is called sweet grass, and the leaves smell like vanilla. Sweetgrass is also native to the prairie lands, and it is used by indigenous peoples to braid together and used in ceremonies that invoke ancestors and the spirit. We use them in our altar. I hope that you enjoyed this little tour of our garden. I hope that you got some ideas for your own garden, or maybe just got a little excited about gardening yourself. Be well.
My name is Kathy Clark, and I'm one of your pastoral associates. Each week, we make a space for holding each other in our hearts and for the prayers of the people. Who are you holding in your heart? What prayers do you have? You may share them in the live chat. If you would like it mentioned in the service, please let Reverend Gage, our intern minister, Mandy Huizinga, or email pastoralassociates@unitytemple.org. A celebration of life for beloved longtime member Carrie Banks is being held tomorrow, Monday, July 19th, from 5 to 8 at Fitzgerald's in Berwyn. Her family is inviting friends to join them to celebrate the life of this cherished member. Locally, the following people were reported killed during the days between July 8th and July 14th. DeAndre Abrams, 26. Jalen Anderson, 19. Victor Manuel Barreto, 23. Kellen Bledsoe, 35. Roberto Beltran, 54. John Carter, 31. Danny Klein, 47. Jordan Dawson, 26. Jamie Hawkins, 33. Dorian McGee, 16. Kenneth Michael Nelson, 35. Dabrowski O'Neill, 28. Kenneth Patton, 29. Charles Space, 26. Landre Sylvester, 31. Miles Thompson, 18. Tyrone Toussaint, 59. Clavante White, 34. Christopher Williams, 39. May we keep their families and others touched by violence in our prayers. May we also pray for the perpetrators and the impact the violence will have on their lives as well. Remember, we are a community of connection. If you are missing or thinking of someone, give them a call or email or a text to stay in touch. If you wish to speak with someone, contact a pastoral associate at pastoralassociates@unitytemple.org.
Please join me in a moment of prayer and reflection as I read this poem by Eric Williams titled, There is Light. In the beginning, there was light, infinite and expansive, flowing out from an unseen center. Throughout creation, there is light. From the steady sun, the glowing moon, the flashing meteor, the twinkling stars, and the auroras dancing in the northern skies. Within each part of creation, there is light, slowed down and held close by every cell and molecule, by each atom and element, there is light. The same light as the source, the same radiance that is in all creatures. May this small flame be a constant reminder to you of your true nature and your kinship with all beings. Blessed be. Ashe.
Silently into the night I
I wanted to tell you a story today. A story of how I have been transformed by Mother Earth, of my relationship with her. And every time I sat down to write it, I got stuck. It's a story that, while it has somewhat of a beginning, really has no sequential events. It's a webbed story, an interconnected, entwined, circular story where I sometimes get so mixed up that I come back to where I was just as a different person. There's no order, and some of the stories aren't even mine, but rather other gleanings that I have learned as I have dug deeper into my relationship with our beautiful planet. This is a dialogue, a conversation with our Mother Earth. So bear with me as I share some of my gleanings. I'd like to think that Mother Earth gets as much as I do out of our relationship, but I'm not sure that's true. I actually think she gives more than I ever can. Whenever someone tells me they want to start a garden or gardening generally, a part of my soul screams, yes, yes, tend our Mother Earth, listen to her secrets, hold her close. But gardening is a gift of reciprocity. You must give in order to take those secrets. And giving in this case, well, it's a simple gift, is hard labor. That labor, though, is particular. I'm not just talking about back-bending, fingernail dirty labor. It's a labor that is adaptable, that requires one to be adaptable. Even in the predictable pieces of gardening, such as perennial plants, there's always change happening. Different weather patterns, new insects, or an invasive species. I think we like to fool ourselves into thinking that we have our routines, that things remain the same, and that they should remain the same. But just 2 consecutive gardening days will tell you that nothing in the natural world is ever the same. Maybe the temperature is different, or it's bees instead of mosquitoes flying around your head. Life doesn't know how to stay the same. Each day, plants, animals, and humans must adapt to the new information we process. I suppose it's a bit like congregational life. Things do not and cannot remain the same. Frankly, if they did, not only would life be boring, but we'd never be challenged. This might be a little lesson, a key maybe to gardening and life. Gardening is creating growing conditions that allow a plant to thrive within its setting, to be its optimal self, to grow as tall, as full as it can, to cultivate as many fruits, and to give back to its environment what it gets. Life, too, is about creating the ultimate growing conditions. Our congregations serve just that purpose. They help us to cultivate the best of ourselves. We, too, always grow, always change. cultivating our own fruit for others to share, and in gratitude for this growth cycle, we give what we can back to our community that fosters space for us. There is a cycle of give and take. We grow in the optimum conditions our community gives us. We grow because it is our purpose to always be better than we are. And as we grow, we give the gifts that foster growth back to our community so that we can continue to help others grow. The thing is, though, that growing conditions that a garden creates sometimes allow space and ideal conditions for plants that many gardeners consider unwanted. We deem these plants weeds because they are not as beautiful as bee balm and coneflower, or because they give us less fruit than zucchini or watermelon. Yes, some of these plants will totally take over a garden, leaving no room for more desired plants. We certainly have to trim those plants back or uproot them. But most of them, while not necessarily helpful to us, are helpful to our Mother Earth or her children. And many are helpful to us in disguise. Jewelweed, for instance, has tiny orange and yellow flowers and has no purpose in the garden except to perhaps attract pollinators. Yet the sap from the stems of these so-called weeds can actually help with mosquito bites. Or how about plantain, a common weed often found in the cracks of the sidewalk? Native peoples sometimes call this white man's footprints because it's an invasive species brought by Europeans to the North American continent. Yet it too is more than meets the eye. The salve that can be made from its leaves, combined with beeswax and olive oil, creates this amazing salve that heals cuts, scrapes, burns, and bruises, and rashes. Yet sometimes growing conditions are ideal for growth. We see this here in Unity Temple as well, when we see how quickly we've grown with new members and changed our congregation size in just the last decade. Yet these growing conditions can also leave space for other things to sneak in, some of which needs to be uprooted, and some of which we need to learn to embrace creatively. Not all unexpected weeds are harmful. Sometimes we just need to find a new way of looking at those weeds, finding a new purpose for them, finding the gifts they hold, and yes, sometimes those gifts are the gift of letting go. And speaking of letting go, gardening is the ultimate lesson in letting go. Just plant your garden and go away for 2 weeks. It's likely you will either return to find your plants wilting and dying in the sun, or a new jungle of everything everywhere when you get back. It's likely you might find a volunteer from last year's plants, or something from your neighbor's garden in the mix. Or maybe you'll find a new pollinator this year that you never knew about. Letting go is not only about realizing what you can and cannot control, it's also about opening yourself up to the new. When you loosen the reins on a horse, you might find a new path. In a garden, you'll likely find a new species or new insects or a new way of growing something. You might find yourself beginning to listen, see, and learn from things you never thought of before. In my own backyard, I watched the northern flickers congregate, and they made me curious about what they were eating in my backyard. I found a massive ant colony underneath the ground. And before I called the exterminator, I did a little research and found out that the ants were helping my plants. They were helping the peonies bloom by eating some of the sap and nectar off of the blossoms. They were also helping to aerate my soil and decompose leaf litter. Now all 3 of us ants, birds, and humans live together in harmony. I just needed to pay attention. Paying attention can be hard, especially in our modern day when we are busy moving from one thing to the next. Plants, however, will certainly tell you how they feel if you pay attention. Leaves are often the windows of the soul for a plant, telling you when a bug or a fungus is bothering it, when a plant needs more water or has too much. I suppose it's a lot like humans. There are often outward signs for us too, for when we need a break. I'm reminded here of the Hebrew Bible story of the prophet Elijah, who one day gets mad at God and rants and raves at God. God's response to him is, eat a snack and take a nap. Gardening has taught me to pay attention to visual cues in a new way, to be mindful of when I need to eat and take a nap. The plants need us and we need them, and so we need to pay attention to each other. Just like in our own congregational community, we need each other. Even if we don't need to be watered or don't know how to ask to be watered, we are still part of the garden. We can shade each other, attract pollinators, or simply be a beautiful bouquet together. Each part of the garden, like each part of our congregation, has its part to play, large or small. And each part needs each other to be complete. And to truly be complete, we need variety. Modern agriculture has gifted us with insect-repelling, drought-resisting, self-pollinating crops. While some of these advances are good, they also create a monoculture, meaning they leave us susceptible to disaster if the crops fail. If one only plants one kind of corn, for instance, and that corn fails, the impacts are massive. To be truly successful, we need variety. Lemon, lime, and purple basil, red okra and Tigger melons, black corn, amaranth, and black-eyed peas. The more we have, the more resistant we are to disaster, and the more resilient we are because our gifts are shared and because we are not reliant on just one crop. I think the best example of this need for interdependence comes from Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass. In the story she writes of the three sisters, the first sister, Corn, grows tall and straight so that the second sister, Beans, can entwine herself around the corn. The first sister allows the second, the corn allows the beans, to avoid the ground and the animals that would eat them, the beans. But it also allows light to get to that second sister. The third sister, Squash, creates a barrier for both weeds and predators for both the corn and the beans. It might seem that corn and squash are doing all the work, but as Kimmerer writes, the beans are one of the only plants that can take nitrogen from the air and put it in the soil with the help of a bacterium in its stems. Without nitrogen, none of the plants can survive. Let me read you a bit of what Kimmerer writes in her book. There are layers upon layers of reciprocity in this garden between the bean and the bacterium, the bean and the corn and the squash, and ultimately the people. It's tempting to imagine that these three are deliberately in working together, and perhaps they are. But the beauty of the partnership is that each plant does what it does in order to increase its own growth. But as it happens, when individuals flourish, so does the whole. The way of the three sisters reminds me of one of the basic teachings of our people, The most important thing each of us can know is our unique gift and how to use it in the world. Individuality is cherished and nurtured because in order for the whole to flourish, each of us has to be strong in who we are and carry our gifts with conviction so that they can be shared with others. Being among the sisters provides a visible manifestation of what community can become when its members understand and share their gifts. In reciprocity, we fill our spirits as well as our bellies. Now that's a gift from the garden, for sure. Our gifts as individuals are what makes the community at Unity Temple, and Unity's gift is a community is part of what makes Unitarian Universalism in the world. When we tend our own garden, making ourselves the best we can be, we tend the garden of Unity Temple, and ultimately the garden of Unitarian Universalism. It's important to name, however, that this metaphor of the garden works for many of us in this moment, especially as we turn to tending the garden of Unity Temple in a new way. But it doesn't work for all of us. During my first semester in seminary, I took a course called Religion and the Social Process. It was a course in which we looked at issues of oppression, the church's complicity in that oppression, and also the way the church might help bring justice to the world. In the week on ecology, I learned about the intersectional nature of ecological issues in ways that I had never even considered. I learned that the largest dumping sites for chemical wastes are in poor indigenous communities. That health issues like asthma and lead poisoning are highest in BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and lower income communities. Essentially, that those most impacted by the ecological devastation that we continue to participate in are often Black, Indigenous, people of color, and low income peoples. My little garden didn't seem to be much of a fix for these large-scale issues. But then I thought maybe if we work harder to create more community gardening space, especially in communities where this is happening the hardest, that we might begin to fix the problem. The thing is, though, that this perspective made a lot of assumptions that I couldn't see. I learned another lesson about gardening. It isn't for everyone. My perspective as a privileged white woman was blinded by the economic assumption that everyone had land or access to land that could be used for gardening. My perspective as a privileged white woman was blinded against all the enslaved peoples who were forced to do manual labor on the land and whose descendants find the idea of getting their hands dirty abhorrent. My perspective as a privileged white woman didn't let me see the indigenous people who see this land as sacred and animals and plants as their siblings. Gardening certainly might be my thing, the thing that has taught me so much, but it's not everyone's. And this again reminds me that we all have our gifts and our baggage. It is only in community that we can heal the harm and embrace our gifts. Before I end, I would like to share one more gleaning I received from gardening. One day in late September, I sat in my garden. It was hot, but the breeze was cool, and it brought the scents and smells and feelings of the impending autumn. Most of the vegetables were at an end, though the cosmos and zinnias were still going strong. The crickets were humming the sad song of the end of warm days, and there were less butterflies than a month ago. I sat surrounded by the earth, dirty, for I don't garden cleanly. And for just a moment, I felt so small. I began to blend with the earth and my surroundings, becoming less the intrusive alien and more of an expected visitor. In that moment, I seemed to see the nourishment of the soil within me through these kind creatures and plants that had sustained my body throughout the summer. It was in this oh so very brief moment that I caught a glimpse of another life on this planet. A life that I literally cannot live without because it sustains my body. A few months later, I read Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass. And at the very end, she writes a little section that she calls a note on the treatment of plant names. This note reminded me of the moment in the garden just a few months earlier. It also convicted me to begin a practice that held the moment that I had experienced in the garden at the end of September each day. A spiritual practice of gardening, even when I wasn't actually gardening. I want to read this note to you. We accept with nary a thought that the names of people are capitalized. To write George Washington without capitals would be to strip that man of his special status as a human. It would be laughable to write mosquito with a capital M if it were in reference to a flying insect, but acceptable if we were discussing a brand of boat. Capitalization conveys a certain distinction, the elevated position of humans and their creations in the hierarchy of beings. Biologists have widely adopted the convention of not capitalizing the common names of plants and animals unless they include the name of a human being or an official place name. This seemingly trivial grammatical rulemaking, in fact, expresses deeply held assumptions about human exceptionalism. That we are somehow different and indeed better than the other species who surround us. Indigenous ways of understanding recognize the personhood of all beings as equally important, not in a hierarchy, but a circle. This is why I do not capitalize my name, a reminder of that sunny September day and how I, too, am part of the cycle of life. May we all find our moment in the garden, be it in a garden or not. May we all keep growing.
Good morning, UT family. I'm Christine Steyer, co-founder of Working in Concert and the artistic director of Bellissima Opera. Since 2010, Bellissima has brought free music to over 23,000 Chicago youths in underserved communities, and we look forward to re-entering the schools soon. In June 2022, we will premiere Future Perfect, an operatic fairy tale co-created with 1,300 Chicago and Oak Park area youth. Today's funds will provide support to the dozen young actors, puppeteers, and dancers in underserved communities who will participate in the opera by offering them a small stipend. Thank you so much. Please join us in singing hymn 207, Earth Was Given as a Garden.
Each day in the garden is a new day. It's a bright, shiny, rainy, drizzly day with new lessons and learnings for each and every one of us. Nature is calling to us to pay attention to each little leaf, each little insect, to learn from them, to grow from them, so that we can cultivate ourselves, our souls, our minds into being the best we can be. May we never lose the enthusiasm of learning from ourselves and the world. May we never lose the enthusiasm to learn. May our gardens be cultivated all our lives. And may we see the little things in the big. Blessed be, may it be so.